It Chapter 2 arrives as another entry in the Stephen King movie resurgence, hot off the back of the critical and commercial smash 2017's The Dark Tower. I mean It Chapter 1. So what we're going to do is go over some of the more prominent Easter eggs and references, and because we love just super rad cool guy content over here at youtube.movie/sunday.gov.au, let's throw in some deleted scenes while we're at it, and also break down how they changed the ending from the source material. Now if you do want to jump to a particular point in this video, these are the topics and there are time codes in the description to get to them. And you know how people say it's important to do at least one kind thing a day? Well, maybe that thing for you could be leaving a like on this video, or better yet, do that and then go and do something actually nice for a real person. Now, if you've read this book like me, you will know that it's 1,138 pages. Oh my God, THX 1138. Anyways, it's that many pages long for some reason. So even with these two movies, there's bound to be some changes to the source material. For one, in the flashback sequence where we see its previous forms, one of them is a giant bird. And in the book, that's one of the forms it confronts Mike as a child as. Also, Eddie driving a luxury car in the movie could be a nod to in the book how he owns a limo service and isn't in risk assessment. There's even actually a paragraph from It the novel seen on screen when we see Bill writing his book at the end. And in regards to the ending, which we'll get back to, there's a few things they shift around. For one, in the book, Mike gets injured and doesn't end up fighting it in its final form. There's also a very complicated and nonsensical meeting with an intergalactic / interdimensional turtle, which is omitted completely. There is a statue of the turtle in the school, which is probably a nod to that. And also, you know how that house caves in at the end? In the book, it's the whole town of Derry that is destroyed. This is like a smaller scale version of that. Now, the It Telemovie also gets a bit of play here. We're actually covering part 1 and 2 of that on Caravan of Garbage at the moment. I'll link that below if you want to check it out. Some of it holds up somewhat. But anyways, the original Ben Hanscom, that actor is seen in the boardroom that introduces new Ben Hanscom. Bill's bike Silver appears to be the same model that is seen from the Telemovie. And there's a few nods to the Tim Curry version of Pennywise. In the funhouse where you get these clown puppets swinging back and forth, they somewhat resemble that version of It, in particular the outfit and the hair, and the line, "Kiss me, fat boy," is taken directly from that Telemovie. This movie, of course, is rife with 80s nostalgia. At one point, Eddie is seen wearing a Thundercats t-shirt in a flashback. Some of the music we get is very era-appropriate. Cover Girl from New Kids on the Block, Word Up by Cameo, a whole bunch of others. I won't get into it. You can just Google the soundtrack. And of course, we get some video games, namely Street Fighter 1, a not very good precursor to Street Fighter 2, and some of the other arcade units we get are Rampage and Mortal Kombat. Even though Mortal Kombat is actually a 90s game, but it's still a property that's owned by Warner Brothers. There's also many a horror movie reference. We see that the theater from the 80s is playing Nightmare on Elm Street 5, a movie thought to be so bad that it killed the franchise, but it didn't obviously because that just keeps going forever. There's a poster for the Lost Boys. And of course there's a moment where some legs grow out of a human head and it scuttles around like a spider, which is seemingly a direct reference to The Thing, with even a very similar line being used. Now, this being a Stephen King property, there are nods to other Stephen King properties. Beverly being covered in blood, that is from the book, but it's also very reminiscent of Carrie. When people are trying to kick down the cubicle door on the toilet that she's in, Henry Bowers says, "Here's Johnny," like in The Shining. And speaking of, when we get a flashback to the death of Mike's parents, he's riding a tricycle, which could also be a reference to The Shining. And speaking of movies, we get a cameo from director Andy Muschietti in The Pharmacy, and also director Peter Bogdanovich, who is helming the film that Bill is working on. That also happens to be on the Warner Brothers lot, Stage 14, meaning that It Chapter 2, yes, that is a Warner Brothers film, as is the film within this film that Bill is working on. And of course, who could forget the Stephen King cameo as the pawn shop owner? He's actually not a bad actor, there you go. But it's nice to see him showing up. Now, as far as the ending goes, this deviates massively from the book. And all of this movie also seems to be dedicated to having a dig at Bill for not being able to end his books properly. Now, this is a criticism that's actually leveled against Stephen King time and time again. People say that often his books feel rushed or unfinished when it comes to the final act. I absolutely don't always think that's the case. And apparently the way that Stephen King writes is it's like a free flow of ideas. He doesn't necessarily plan out where things are going to go. He just kind of lets the story kind of unfold. So that could explain that. Anyways, I think that was also a bit of a nod and a wink to how they changed this ending. What happens in the book, and I am totally butchering this by trying to condense it, you have to bite down onto Pennywise's tongue and then enter the macroverse to defeat him in an astral form of sorts. And that's where you come across the trans-dimensional turtle, which is an enemy of Pennywise.
Cowabunga.
Also, it's heavily implied that Richie's character is gay. That's not something that's in the book. Bill Denborough's wife is also in the finale, though she's seen in the movie, that's omitted entirely. But there are still things that remain. It turning into a giant spider for one. Oh, it doesn't have a clown head in the book or the Telemovie. Eddie's death, that carries over. And the weirdest thing, which I can understand why they took out, is that to get out of the sewer after the kids defeat Pennywise the first time, Beverly has to have sex with all of them in order to escape. It's a fucking bizarre part of the book and a good omission in all people's opinions. I think the reason for these changes though is this thing really requires a more cinematic kind of showdown as opposed to like people tumbling through time and space. And also in doing that, you remove the Pennywise element, you know, the scary clown, which is kind of a main focus for a lot of these movies. Right, now as far as deleted scenes go, there's quite a few that we know about. This movie was rumored to open with the Black Spot nightclub fire, which is basically a soldiers' nightclub during World War II that was burnt down in what was considered a race-related attack. Also, screenwriter Gary Dauberman included a scene where Richie does an impression of Al Pacino. That's something that Bill Hader is actually very good at. But it was requested by Hader himself that be removed because it's a bit that he's been doing for years and he feels like it's old hat at this point. Also, director Guillermo del Toro was going to play the school janitor. You know, the one that Ben runs into as he's sprinting through the school to escape Pennywise. And apparently if he could have shot that scene, then the whole thing would have been about 5 minutes longer. Now you may have heard this, but there was a controversial scene removed from chapter 1, which was rumored to be included in part 2. But again, it seems they decided not to go with it because it was deemed too gruesome. This is something that was actually filmed and there is one image of it so far that exists. It's Pennywise in a very early form, almost human, because as the movie suggests, being a clown is only a more recent thing that he's been a fan of doing. Over the millennia, he's taken on multiple forms. But anyways, there was going to be a scene set in 1637 where a woman is running from an unseen evil and she gets cornered in a room and you see Pennywise as a black silhouette kind of shifting in and out of shape, like trying to decide on a form. And there's a bit of back and forth like, don't you know my children, etc. and so forth. And Pennywise says something along the lines of, I'm going to eat your children. I'm going to eat all your children unless you give me that baby that you've got right now. And then you'll never see me again. I'll disappear. And that's what ends up happening. She puts the baby down on the floor and then leaves the room, allowing it to eat the baby. Now, I can also understand why they took this out because though these are horror movies, they're not really that kind of horror movie, even though these movies are very much intended for adults. I feel like in the same way the Telemovie was, these are going to be things that kids get a hold of at sleepovers and put on. You know, it's kind of a safer entry-level horror movie, and this kind of crosses the line of that with the inclusion of a baby eating scene. That being said, it can bite the arm off a kid out of a drain. No problem, don't even stress. Is there anything though that I've missed in terms of Easter eggs? I mean, I definitely have, so if you know any, please leave them below. And if any of these deleted scenes or book changes you would have liked to have seen included, I'd love to hear about that also. Now look, if you'd like to see some more stuff or hear some more stuff related to it, like I said, we're covering the mini-series for Caravan of Garbage. Part 2 of that is going up on Tuesday. But this Monday on my podcast, The Weekly Planet, where we talk movies and comics and TV shows, we're going to be doing an in-depth review of It Chapter 2, spoilers and all, how it compares to the first, how it compares to the book, is it a successful franchise in general, will we be getting an It Chapter 3, because I think there is a bit of a wiggle room to make that happen. Anyways, that's all linked below if you want to check it out, but thanks for watching this video, I genuinely appreciate it. Take care.